and when a MGTOW listener reads this title, they're definitely going to click this. Many will not listen to the context of my argument and conclusion. First, to answer the question, yes, MGTOW is a losing mindset. Because to think that being a man going his own way means that you will most likely have to shirk off most things based in society today. I mean, all of the systems in society are tied to gynocentrism, nepotism, racism, and self-serving biases. Greed takes precedence over justice, logic, reason, critical thinking, and objectivity. So to make the assertion that I'm going my own way from relationships and dating and shirking women off altogether, fair enough. It's your prerogative as an individual to do so. However, there is collateral damage to that in the form of content creators trying to convince an audience that this is the right thing to do. You can't convince someone that already has their mind made up. It's like when Steven Crowder has his Change My Mind segment on his show. You see, his mind is already made up. There's no changing that. You see, it's impossible to change people's mindset because it's that mindset that has put them in a comfortable position to where their mindset and behavior is benefiting from it. In other words, there are powers higher than these individuals that facilitate or engender this behavior to where they benefit from it. Okay? So with that being said, MGTOW doesn't provide the benefit for men that usurps the benefit simps, cucks, and manginas get from the things that they do on a day-to-day basis. That's why MGTOW is a losing mindset, because MGTOW assumes that by trying to reach men that are willingly not listening, that they're going to change these ignorant people's minds. The only time listeners, transients, and people actually listen is when the person has more than these people, specifically more money, more women, more fame, and more authority than them. Also, not listening to these content creators will affect them negatively, right? The only time people will listen is when they got hurt in some sort of way. What MGTOW fails to grasp is that people are inherently reactive by nature. People usually wait until the last minute to get stuff done, right? If the person gets no more benefit from action than they do from inaction, they will naturally do the thing that requires less work. Let me elaborate. If a woman knows that it takes no work to get men to throw money at them, then naturally the woman will be inclined to do nothing. Moreover, the government, corporations, and banks know that people are reactive by nature. So naturally, they facilitate this reactive behavior, which leads to creating problems of which these institutions can, quote unquote, solve. That's their business model. Their business model is to create the problems for these stupid women and these stupid men in order to be, quote unquote, the hero that solved their problems. This is what moral hazard is. Moral hazard is, as the balance defines it, the concept of somebody taking advantage of a situation by taking risks that others will pay for. When that happens, the consequences of risk taking doesn't fall on the party taking the action, but they still receive all of the benefits. Link in the description. You know, I could do this all day. You need an example of moral hazard? Check out this article from Bloomberg about a CEO that made $34 million as a bonus in 2018, even though his bank is a thrift bank, which means that it's smaller than the too big to fail banks. or more specifically, less than $10 billion. Link in the description. Once again, not only are governments, corporations, and banks complicit in moral hazards against working class people, women conduct moral hazards on a day-to-day basis because they know they don't have to pay for their bad behavior. All right? Because simp men and cucks, right along with these governments, corporations, and banks, facilitate this. And this will not change until disaster happens, like a Great Depression, like a war, like literal extinction level events. Once again, because people are reactive by nature. They're not proactive in their behavior. As the phrase says, God only helps those who helps themselves. Now, where does this leave content creators in MGTOW? Should we really be concerned with helping people that don't want to listen? My answer, not really. It's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. It's not MGTOW's responsibility to coddle grown-ass men. It's not MGTOW's responsibility to affect grown-ass men's free will. Just like it's not an employer's responsibility to pay a worker if the worker doesn't do the work required to get paid. You feel? MGTOW can have all of the answers to all of the problems, but if individuals don't use the knowledge provided, then what was the point? At that point, content creators effectively become talking heads. You know, I can't drive this point home enough. Let me just overview my channel for a minute. I've said very real things on this channel. Things that were meant to make my listeners really think about how to improve their own situations by making better decisions and actually acting on those better decisions. Potential without action is pointless. It equals out to nothing. So my thing is this. When I do give advice, people don't watch those videos. But when I say something charged or has an aggressive overtone to it, that gets a lot of visibility. In other words, my listeners don't give a shit about my advice. They just listen for the shock value. I'm aware of that. I'm also aware that my same listeners can't say I didn't tell them what's really going on in society, because my thing is to put shit out on Front Street and Center Road, okay? That's what I do. But, it's no benefit to me when I clearly give my listeners the keys to the BMW i8 Black with the paddle shift with the title in their name, and they willingly choose not to drive it because it's a mark on their pride. Because their pride says that I shouldn't follow the advice of a nigger. That's it. That's basically it. People turn down advice, answers, and things that will literally help them out because they don't like the source that's saying that information. Okay? They are willing to literally destroy themselves because the ones that are hooking them up isn't quote unquote like them. There's no helping that. There's no helping that. There's no helping that. Because people don't like changing. People don't like changing. People don't like the work required to make change. That's why people are static and not dynamic in general. They don't like to work. Period. I've had tons of people turn me down when I tell them I can show you how to make YouTube videos. They can get their own name out there. They can even potentially be more successful than I am. But they turn it down because they don't want to do the work associated with it. That's why. Okay? It all points to that. All of the problems in society point to that. It's because people don't want to do work. Okay? That's why illegal immigrants come to America, because they don't want to do the work required to make a living. That's why there's a market for simps and thoughts, because thoughts don't want to do the work required to keep a good man. That's why dumb black people have low IQs, because they don't want to do the work required to be smart. And so on, and so on, and so on. Now, where does this leave MGTOW? Once again, it puts content creators in a very compromising position, because the listeners don't respect the work content creators put in, because they've never experienced having to produce something on their own that isn't sticking a dick in pussy and producing a kid. You feel? They don't respect the idea of production. They don't know how to make something on their own, not money or income, which is something individuals have to do. Okay? But to actually produce something that was totally your own brand, your own equity in yourself. They don't want to do that. That's the biggest moral hazard. The idea that people won't invest in themselves. Lord, overlay.